Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to have a look at Pokémon TCG Pocket. Now, they actually had this at the World Championships, but when I say they had this at the World Championships, we need to take this with a bit of a pinch of salt. Because you see, they did have this at the World Championships, I'm not lying to you. However, it was basically just, well, it wasn't basically, it was just pack openings. You could go along and you could open some packs, and I did. I went along and I opened some packs, and it was fun, don't get me wrong. But obviously, you go along, you open some packs, that's kind of fun. We're still waiting to get the real details on the gameplay. And you know the deal at this stage. As soon as that's all revealed, as soon as we know that information, I will share it with you. That's what we do. But we were shown some cool stuff, which I can tell you about. And that means we can have a little bit of an update. Like this Sabrina card. Let's start off with this Sabrina card. So this was basically a full art Sabrina that I pulled from one of my packs. It was quite quiet. I got a bit of time there. I think I saw all the cards available. And it looks like a very cool card. Now, it's actually got, what is interesting is it tells us something about the game. It switches out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. Your opponent chooses the new active Pokemon. So this is kind of like Boss's Orders, but it's terrible Boss's Orders. Because Boss's Orders, you choose the Pokemon. You make your opponent switch, but you choose the Pokemon that comes active. This is a supporter card, which makes your opponent switch, but they choose the new active. Just to be clear, the existence of Sabrina tells us we are not getting Boss's Orders. Because there's no world in which you print Sabrina, and I use the word print very liberally here because obviously they're not actually printed, they're digital cards, but there's no way that we're actually going to be seeing this as a card, and then we also get Boss's Orders, because that makes no sense. This is just an objectively worse Boss's Orders. There is absolutely no chance whatsoever we're going to be getting Boss's Orders. So this tells us a little something about the game. We're not going to be seeing gusting in the traditional sense. Sabrina tells us that. We're going to be seeing much more your opponent chooses. Now remember, Pocket has fewer bench Pokemon, we know that, we're pretty sure it's free, so that makes this a more powerful effect than it would be in the regular game, but we need to look at these cards and actually see what we can learn, because this is very, very important. Sabrina actually tells us a lot about the game, because it tells us we're not getting traditional gusting, and that is huge. But check out this little video I took of this Sabrina card, because look at the effect of this Sabrina card in the game. Look at how this Sabrina card looks. It's phenomenal. Huge fan of this. But there are some other cards, many of which have actually been shown off properly on the official Twitter. So we can have a look at some of the fancier cards. Like this Squirtle. I love this Squirtle. Beautiful artwork. And again, we don't know enough about the game to really know for certain, but I will say Single Energy 20 seems kind of good, especially with the lower HPs floating around. So that's something I'm going to keep a little bit of an eye on. We've got a bunch of Pokemon with like 60 HP, like this Squirtle, like the Psyduck I'm going to show you in a minute. And if they're weak to water, that's going to be 40 damage, which is kind of huge. Oh yeah, speaking of which, look at the weakness on Squirtle. Plus 20. Not times 2. And weakness has been times 2 for many years. But if you go back to like the Diamond and Pearl era, for instance, you will notice that there were a lot of cards, pretty much, well, the vast majority of cards, they didn't have this. They had plus 20, plus 30, whatever. So let's take Uxie, which was a very big card back in the day from Legends Awakened, and it had plus 20 weakness. Now Uxie level X had times 2 because that was a level X, that was a special card. But if we take Gyarados, for instance, from Stormfront, plus 30. It looks like we've got that kind of weakness going on here, which again is a fairly significant change. We can see other little basics here like Psyduck. It's not a fancy card like Squirtle, but it's got lovely Shibuzo artwork. 10 damage stops your opponent playing supporter cards. Well, in a world where HPs are much lower, if your opponent's not drawing very much, maybe this could actually end up being a particularly interesting Pokemon. We've seen things like Haunter with rather phenomenal artwork, single energy 30 on a stage 1. Seems kind of interesting. Or Cubone, single energy reduced damage by 20 with wonderful so-so artwork. And while we're looking at smaller Pokemon, let's have a look at Bulbasaur, 2 energy 40. You can see where they're going, they're all fairly generic. One kind of important point here, of course. There's some good artists here. Shibuzo is one that's a favourite to a lot of people. So-So is one that a lot of people collect. They also do artwork for the One Piece TCG. And this Squirtle is phenomenal. Remember, this is a digital card game. We're not getting physical versions of these cards. And I know a lot of people are going to be a little bit upset about that. Imagine if you're collecting So-So artwork. You see this redonkulous card in TCG Pocket. It's got beautiful artwork, and you can't have it. Now, I don't think it's going to happen, let's be perfectly clear. One of my dreams is that we basically get a standalone set, maybe made to order, like we see with things like Premium, Bandai, or Hasbro Pulse, where Pokemon just say, we're going to make physical versions of these cards, we're going to make them to order, go order on this website. I don't know if they're going to. There is no reason to suggest they will. Nothing has been suggested along those lines. But we see other companies doing it, and it would be a great way to release some of this artwork with absolutely no financial downside, guaranteed moneymaker, and then we all get to enjoy the cards. I'm not saying it will happen. I think, honestly, the smart money is that it won't. But I desperately want it to happen, ladies and gentlemen. It would make me happy. So what about some of the bigger cards that were shown off with this Pokemon TCG Pocket preview? What about some of them? Well, we saw Articuno EX with this phenomenal artwork. Absolutely phenomenal. And we got 140 HP on a basic EX, which tells us again that the HPs we're looking for here are significantly lower than we would find in the base game. And we've got 2 energy 40 and 3 energy 80 to the active, 10 to each of the bench, which seems expensive and a little underpowered, but when we're looking at TCG Pocket, we need to adjust our expectations. HPs are going to be lower, damage is going to be lower, and it's still too early to start really saying what's good and what's not. We do not have enough information, but I'm telling you right now, a card like this could end up being good, because 140 on a basic is a lot, it seems. And we've got attacks which seem to be doing a fair amount of damage here. You have been warned. In terms of other fancy cards we saw this Pidgeot EX. Phenomenal artwork. I mean, it's all lovely. Aniseki Dynamic, they've actually been doing great art lately. They are getting on my radar for doing ridiculous art. I love that they've come and given us this Pidgeot. 130 HP on a stage 2, but it's not an EX. It's a single prizer, which explains how it's lower than, say, for instance, Articuno. And what we've got here is an ability. Once during your turn, you may switch your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. They choose the new active. And if you're thinking, hang on a second, Wassy, isn't that Sabrina? Yes. That is Sabrina. It's on a stage 2, which means it's going to be awkward, don't get me wrong. But that seems like a very powerful effect. If we're not going to be getting gusting on a supporter, having this on a stage 2 seems awesome. And then 2 energy 70 is a bit meh, but again, that's going to get a lot of our basic Pokemon here, so maybe it's going to be worth it. Just something we noticed here. Also worth noting, there is that Gardevoir we saw previously that lets you attach an energy from your energy zone to your psychic Pokemon in the active spot. Remember, of course, we're going to be attaching energy from the energy zone, not from our hand. and an extra energy a turn seems pretty gosh darn good. There are a couple of EXs that we saw. We saw Mewtwo, Charizard, and Pikachu. And these have kind of your generic artwork like we were going to be expecting from most of them. And some of these we've seen before, but just as a nice example of the kind of cards we're going to be seeing. And also I pulled them and I can show you those images, and that's kind of fun. Mewtwo, 150 HP, 4 energy, 150 discard 2. Maybe combine it with Gardevoir. Could that be an early good deck? We don't know. We haven't seen enough cards. Charizard, 4 energy, 200, discard 2. But it's a stage 2, remember. With energy acceleration, could be great. And then Pikachu, 2 energy, 30 for each of your bench lightning Pokemon, which we now know is going to be basically capped at 90 because of the free bench Pokemon. But I'm telling you right now, basic Pokemon, 2 energy, potentially 90 damage. I need to keep stressing the fact that we do not know what's going to be good. We do not have the full set of cards. We do not know everything. We are missing a huge amount of information. Okay? But with that borne in mind, this looks ridiculous. This Pikachu looks absurdly good. It looks absolutely ridiculously absurdly good. So I'm just telling you right now, with big pinch of salt needed, this looks ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely ridiculous. This Pikachu is one of my early favourites for best card. I think this Pikachu could be absurdly good. We'll have to wait and see. But just from early impressions, and I need to stress we are only talking about early impressions here, this really does seem like one of the best cards around. And of course we know at this stage it's got the super fancy version I showed you previously. And hey, I went and pulled that from these packs as well. Cool. Right, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you need to know, and now it's over to you guys. How excited are you for Pokémon TCG Pocket? What are you looking forward to? Are you going to get obsessed and play it obsessively? Because I'm telling you right now, I am going to play an absurd amount of Pokémon TCG Pocket. I am about as excited for this as I have ever been for any video game ever. Oh, it's going to be fun. But I've told you what you need to know, so now it's over to you guys. Go nuts in the comment section, tell me all of this, but be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.